Hey, this is your boy Manny Moonraker from UFO Buster Radio, and this is the first mini documentary that I'm putting together, and it has to do with the Levelland, Texas case, which I said on a podcast I would do. Unfortunately, it's like a week late, but you know, stuff happens, life happens, and we've talked about that on the podcast so many times that life gets in the way sometimes. However, this is it. Levelland, Texas, 1957, November, and we are going to talk about what happened, and there might be some correlations to contemporary UFO nonsense right now. You know how it works. So go ahead, pull yourself up by your big girl panties, and like I say on UFO Buster Radio, somebody cue the music. Hey, so welcome back to the mini documentary. So this has to do with Levelland, Texas, 1957, November 4th to be exact. And in this small town in Texas of 10,000 people at the time, which I believe now it's about 30,000 people, there was 15 different accounts of a particular UFO that was driving the folks nuts. 7 of those are actually documented, and that's what we're going to talk about today as part of this little documentary that we're bringing to you from UBR. And let me tell you, the accounts are fantastic, but it makes you kind of wonder, why is it that these great accounts are just gone, forgotten? Because if it wasn't for the fact that I got the itch to make a documentary, I wouldn't know about Levelland at all. So the thing about Levelland, Texas is that the incident actually occurred about an hour after the Russians launched Sputnik 2 into space, and that happened around 10 p.m. Central Standard Time. Around 11 p.m., Patrolman A.J. Fowler, who was in Levelland, received the first report, and it was a doozy. And by the way, I'm doing this mini documentary, and it's about to rain cats and dogs. So anyway, basically Pedro Saucedo was on his pickup truck driving in one of those rural roads out in Texas when on that fateful night, November 4th, he came across a cigar-shaped craft which he described was about 200 feet long. Pedro and his friend were terrified because when they saw the craft, which was just hovering over the ground, it apparently impacted the engine and the truck came to a dead stop. So after receiving that report, A.J. Fowler apparently thought the men had been drinking and kind of dismissed it as two drunken you-know-whats telling tales about their vehicle. But 45 minutes later, A.J. Fowler receives a phone call from a person described as Mr. W, because even back then people did not want to talk about UFOs and give their names. Mr. W described a egg-shaped craft sitting on the road, and when he came across it, it actually also stopped his vehicle in its tracks as well. Now, Mr. W's incident pretty much happened as follows. The craft lifted up silently off the ground about 200 feet and basically took off, and at that point he was able to turn his engine back on. At 12 a.m., A.J. Fowler receives a third phone call from a man that described that they saw this egg-shaped craft about 4 miles north of Levelland, Texas. And the reports continue to come in. A total of 15 people reported this craft, whether it was cigar-shaped or egg-shaped. It was switching colors back and forth, but nothing really came of this because the Air Force got involved, and so did Project Blue Book. So of those 15 reports, you had truck drivers, you had one kid that reported that they saw the craft, and the fact is those reports kept on coming in, and really A.J. Fowler really did not begin to believe in these reports until there was a report by 2 fellow patrolmen. At that point, things became kind of serious, and there was definitely something going on in Levelland, Texas, November 1957. So the patrolman pretty much reported that this, what it looked like basically, is a big red glowing UFO basically that covered the entire roadway they were on. And that was pretty much the end of the reports that were coming in to AJ Fowler. But the Air Force got involved. And so when they were contacted regarding what was going on, just in case it was them who had something to do with it back in 1957, it turns out they said that what people experienced was just a regular old electric storm. People didn't buy that because they saw physical evidence. Cars were stopping, people were frightened, patrolmen were patrolling and reporting. So listen, what can you do? Project Blue Book came in and studied the weather for that day and came back with a conclusion that that was bullshit. There was no electric storm in the area, and those sightings and reports from people to this day are unexplained and they haven't been resolved. But there is something that correlates to those UFOs that happened recently that, you know, if you've been following ufology, you know all about it. So I'm going to read the description to you guys that are watching because, you know, I am the Moonraker and that's what I do. I read shit to people. Basically, listen to this description after this car passes, because this is not a professional recording and we just do whatever the hell we want. So the description says that the craft was as solid, white, smooth, with no edges, uniformly colored, with no nacelles, pylons, or wings, and looked like an elongated egg or tic-tac. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a connection between the Levelland 1957 November incident and the recent Nimitz Tic-Tac UFO, as reported by Commander David Fravor. They also reported an egg-shaped, tic-tac-shaped UFO that was pretty much doing amazing things, right? So there's a connection here. The other connection is it actually also happened in the month of November. So the Tic-Tac video situation with the Air Force and the Navy happened November of 2004. Are these regular old correlations? Am I looking at this too hard? There's a reason why 40 some odd years later we still have the same craft. You can't really say that this was a military aircraft or prototype, because where was it sitting the last 40 some odd years? In somebody's back garage with some old Corvettes? I don't think so. So here's another bit of information that might be fascinating, because it turns out that Tic-Tacs, like candy, did not show up on the scene for people to get exposed to, for those of you who like that word, until 1969. So basically, there were no Tic-Tacs for anyone to refer to as the shape of the craft. So it is very possible that if Tic-Tacs were around in 1957, that many of those folks would have reported this as a Tic-Tac UFO. Keep that in mind, because there are, like I said, there are correlations here that people are missing, and we take these legacy UFO incidents and we kind of forget them. But it's very possible that this UFO that happened in 2004 with Fravor, Nimitz, and everybody else that's involved with this situation, they might be the same craft or from the same ET. So you gotta make your own conclusions. I'm gonna have the links to these reports, the Nimitz, the Levelland case history. I'm gonna have that in the description of this video as this car passes by. However, I really implore all of you to check out the links. Look at the similarities between these two cases and the fact that even today we're saying that these are unresolved. And here's one more thing. It turns out recently someone is saying that the Nimitz video is a fraud. That in fact it was a effects company in Germany that had this video early on, and it is very possible that they doctored it up. But Luis Elizondo and the To the Stars Academy crew say that it's legitimate, that they may have gotten a hold of it prior to it being released to the military to look at, as far as the advanced threat situation, as another car passes by, because they don't give a fuck that I'm recording. But it really is something we should look at. And I thank you guys for watching today. Don't forget to subscribe, to like, and to share this video. Otherwise, there's no reason for me to do anything else with this, because I mean, why bother? Manny Moonraker here, checking out. I'll catch you guys on the podcast. Peace.